Welcome to the second day of the Empowerment Coaching 5-Day Emotional Reset Challenge. I'm starting with thank yous because I so appreciate those who attended the sessions live throughout the presentation series. I am re-recording this particular session and others as well, because I ran into a lot of technological issues in the beginning of most of the session. So I'm thanking the universe for providing me incentive to re-record, because as I am doing this, I feel much more on top of what I need to say and feel very much gratitude for the opportunity to present this, as I may have mentioned yesterday, because it represents how I am showing up in the world. And I lived playing small most of my life. And the series of presentations is about my journey, sharing my secrets, the keys that I found to transformation. And I'm particularly grateful that this presentation represents how people can journey from being stuck, dissatisfied, unfulfilled, showing symptoms of exhaustion, and a sense of really not participating in their lives, somewhat conscious of how things are not right. And this, hopefully, this series will point out what may be stuck. And since this comes from years of my own experience, and particularly the results of my last 8 years, built on top of 40 plus years of professional practice, I feel that I do have gems. However, I go pretty deep, especially by the 4th day, but also that depth is already cast in today's presentation, because there is a spiritual aspect to all of this, not a straight personal development, emotional intelligence kind of offering. So if you're here, I hope you will be patient, and I hope you will expect to find some treasure for yourself. That is my intention, that you're here because you're meant to be here. So let me proceed with the actual content. I'm presenting to you the keys, the secrets in the A.C.E method. A standing for aware, accept, awaken. C, change, choose, connect. E, empower, evolve, expand. Today, we're dealing with the A. And the A, this photo represents physical pain. But what I'm going to do is talking about emotional pain. Before I begin, however, getting into the material, I want to just share a different kind of aspect of myself. This A.C.E system represents my moving on to another plane of my life, something that was sort of predicted by numerology. My number is 22. It's a master number, a paradigm shifter. And I thought, for decades, in my 40s, in my 50s, when am I going to see this part of my destiny? In my 60s, I wondered. In my 70s, I wondered. So I am now getting it. I am getting it that I can present material on a plane that I never would have thought of doing even a few months ago. So, what about pain? Well, if you're like me, when you have physical pain, as represented in this image, you pay attention. If you have a pain in your leg, arm, or something gripping your chest, or anywhere in your body, you want to find a solution. You have a symptom. You check with the doctors or someone to find a solution because pain is a red flag that something is wrong. Now, when it's an emotional pain, it's maybe easy to ignore, not bother with it. And you are now paying attention because you are here. Something's wrong. You want an answer. So, one aspect of how people deal with emotional pain is it doesn't get their attention until it's quite severe. They have symptoms, anxiety, depression, perhaps. And part of this, maybe mostly, it has to do with not learning about self care. Because ultimately, the point of this is learning how to self care on a complete level, how to self love. So, if you have been finding solutions to things that are your challenges, perhaps you may be clued to the fact that what this presentation is about finding keys to your emotional pain, which you may have been too busy to pay attention to, or perhaps feeling ashamed about how you felt, anxious or depressed. You know, drug companies are really smart. I don't know whether you've noticed this from a larger perspective, but they don't talk about symptoms until they have solutions for them. They have a medication, and then they go on the air to talk about various things like depression, even, or cystic fibrosis. That's something that came to me. Rheumatoid arthritis. When they find the drug, they talk about it so that they can offer it to the public and make huge amounts of money. Diabetes. So, I am talking to you about the emotional symptoms because I want to present a path, the A.C.E system, so that you can feel better. You can even be happy. You can get to a place of standing in your well-being so that you can be confident, motivated rather than bored and uninspired at work, engaging with others instead of withdrawing or tolerating an unsatisfying marriage or love relationship. Having money come easily instead of being worried about your bank account that doesn't seem to have enough for emergencies or fun. Best of all, being calm and peace instead of frantic, worrying, stressed. This is the first A, awareness. And as you will look and remember the other A's, acceptance and awaken, it's not the usual thing people talk about in terms of personal development. I have brought my spiritual insights and practices to this presentation. Awareness is key. Once you realize the key is awareness, you have found a treasure. I will be talking about this every once in a while. You see, once you see, it's hard to unsee. If you did the assignment from yesterday, you spent time with yourself. You became aware of different aspects of your life. It's like awareness shines a light on situations that you may have ignored, or if you pay attention, awareness allows you to look deeper. What it does is take you off your usual busyness, doing, propelled by habits to look more closely. It's the kind of thing on a physical level, the pain gets worse, so you want a solution. And hopefully, when you find an allopathic solution from the doctors, you might notice the side effects happen, that they may not really take care of it. So, this awareness muscle also not only helps you to grow, it also helps you to realize whether you're on the right path of growth or not. And more about that a little later. Because this path of awareness, this use of awareness is much bigger than you'll ever know until you realize that you are awareness. All right, so you self-reflected, and perhaps you begin to realize the truth of what I described. The practice of self-awareness, self-reflection brings in awareness. And now you know more about yourself. By being here, you have demonstrated your commitment to your well-being. You spent time with yourself. You acted on self-love, even if you don't realize this. Self-love, which I'll explain more and more. You see, self-love is like a flashlight, as I indicated. It's showing something in the darkness. And it's essential unless you don't mind stumbling and running into things. For example, right now, I'm aware that I'm somewhat hungry. I haven't had breakfast, but I'm focusing on my work and I might ignore it. If I'm using my awareness and really listening, I might go get some food. Another example is when I'm tired. Do I rest, even take a break? No, because I'm busy, responsible to others. I push. I might feel like I don't have enough water. I'm thirsty. But most of the time, we drink water because we're told we're supposed to drink 8 glasses a day, not because we're thirsty. And the reason why this rule was necessary is because most of us have lost our sense of thirst. When we ignore a signal long enough, say of being needing water, it stops signaling us. Just like hunger, after many signals of hunger, it just disappears. And that's an important principle that governs symptoms or sign. When you ignore it long enough, it either intensifies as emotional pain or begins to diminish. And then you're in the same place with something wrong, but now you can ignore it. So, a brief story. I attended Barbara Brennan School of Healing 20 years ago. We were fascinated by this remarkable teacher, Barbara Brennan. In our last year, we're in a class where she was talking with a student who was presenting a client. And no sooner had she started, Barbara interrupted and said, I know who you're talking about. I can see her medical records. And here is what I have to tell you. If we weren't impressed by Barbara by that time, we were blown away. You see, her psychic abilities were so amazing in that context. And because we were there, we wanted that psychic ability as well. We were focused on it. Yet, in her book, which was our primer, main study for 4 years, Hands of Light, I read in it that we want big, impressive kinds of signals, like being able to read a medical record from just a conversation. Yet we ignore basic signals, like being hungry, like being tired. So this is just a reminder of what you can find when you shine the light of awareness is very important. Awareness is like the sun. When it shines on things, they are transformed, Thich Nhat Hanh. Now, if you just take this one principle, in some ways you don't need anything else. Because if you bring your awareness to struggles, to beliefs, to whatever you discovered that seems negative and distressful, when you shine awareness on them, they are transformed. You begin the process of transformation. Now, I want to describe a more dramatic example rather than thirst and hunger and exhaustion that I just described. It was with a client that I was with last week. She was noticing in a visit with her mother that she just had how bothered she was by her mother's usual practice of going through all of her closets, all of her drawers, and whatever she wanted, she claimed as her own. Now, her mother has been doing this her whole life, not only in terms of physical possessions, but this narcissistic mother invaded this client's life with her needs, so much so that the client learned from the very early on that nothing really belonged to her. Now, this client had been a successful fashion magazine editor, and in the period of time that we've been together, she has been attempted to claim her writership, her artistry. You see, she can connect to the world of creativity and imagination and download books, download movie scripts. That's how talented, gifted she is. In recent times, she was able to download a particular book that she wants to bring to completion. But she ran into obstacles, and this mother wound was one of them. So once she was healed of this mother wound, this pain she didn't know she had, things changed for her. I'll get back to her story later on in our presentation. Awareness, it's like the sun. I love this story, and I'm going to relay it without really remembering all of the details. So it goes something like this. You can approach a man looking in the light under a street lamp for something. So you approach and say, "What is that you're looking for?" He said, "My keys." And you ask him, when did you drop your keys? And he says, "Oh, I dropped them a while ago in the garage, but it's so dark in the garage. I decided I needed to find some light. So I came out here to look for it." The funny thing about it is that we're looking in the light, we think, for something we think we lost, but it's really in the darkness. And the point of my presentation is to urge you to look in the darkness in so many ways. And in the presentations of the next few days, one of the darkness, a major source of darkness, is the subconscious. And that, well, that's a little later on in the stories. I want you to know how I thought I was in the light looking for keys. Now, at a particular point in my life, I didn't feel like I had financial security. So I used anything I could find to get me to the place of financial security. So the early part of my path was after I was married. We moved away from Hawaii to Indiana, where we were both attending graduate schools. Not long after our arrival, we're in a grocery store. And my husband got really mad. And I asked him, "What are you so angry about?" He says, "The way people stare at you." And when I thought about it, I hadn't even noticed because I had a way of really not looking at people. I began to realize that that signaled that I was an outsider. Now, this wasn't a conscious thought. This was all the unconscious way this was processed. So now, years later, we were living in Maine, and my sister and her husband, who's also Japanese American, came to visit. Not shortly after they had arrived, that I realized I was staring at their faces. Something was wrong. And then I realized their faces were so flat. Because for the past few years, all I saw were Caucasian white faces. Then I looked in the mirror and I saw that my face was equally flat. I realized how unconsciously I had rejected part of my identity. You see, when we reject parts of ourselves, when people treat us in a negative way, we think there's something wrong with us, and we hide that part. I'm talking about early in childhood when we experience trauma in these obvious ways or subtle ways, and we begin to hide pieces of ourselves. So I hope that you're getting the idea of how important awareness is. I would say that I had an insight that awareness in getting how I had rejected myself was a big aha in my life. Awareness brings such moments. Now, you, as I had early on in my life, very weak awareness muscle, and I needed to strengthen it. And I still need to strengthen it after practicing awareness for many, many years. You see, oops, I jumped ahead. I will talk about building your awareness muscles in a bit, but up to now, my descriptions have shown you that awareness is important in this time because you need to find out all of the things in your life that don't work. Because once aware, you can begin to find solutions, to bring things out of darkness, begin to change things that you may not thought you needed changing. The second of the way, A's, is acceptance. Maya Angelou, acceptance is the first step towards peace. Acceptance, like right now, I'm aware that this presentation is not going as smoothly as I want. And I could struggle with it and let it bother me, or I could simply accept, okay, this is what it is. It's not perfect. And I'm going to have to rely on people's patience and forgiveness. When I accept that, and when you do, we can be at peace and calm as we proceed through this. I love when I read things from Albert Einstein that isn't about science. He says, once we accept our limits, we go beyond them. And this is what this presentation is. It's looking at our limits more and more. And rather than be simply distressed about them, if we simply accept them, not only do we have peace, but when we see our limits, when we accept them, rather than stress about them, we can go beyond them. I went to the next slide. So I want to tell you a story about a friend of ours who has been struggling with 2 cancer diagnoses in the last 10 years. I've been around him more recently, and this is what I heard about what happens to him when he gets assigned an assessment by the doctor that throws him into fear. He works with it. He is with it for maybe an hour or 2, and then he accepts it. And then he's at peace and just can go on with what he needs to do. That many people who don't do this process of acceptance stay in struggle. So that's the key. Whatever is happening in your life, when you don't accept it, you struggle, you resist it, you try to find a way of not believing it's true, or you take the seriousness of the diagnosis or pain, and you seek solution after solution. One of the first things, or the second thing you need to do, is accept. Because when you accept, you stop your struggles, you're at peace. When you realize what the limit is, and at peace, you can go beyond them. You can approach whatever you're going to do next with calmness. And peace and calmness is so rich, as opposed to struggling and striving without knowing that you're there. A more benign way of looking at acceptance is something of an everyday situation. Supposing that you're talking with a friend or talking with a group of people, you're at work, or talking to your coworkers, and the nature of the conversation, the spirit of the conversation irritates you. But you ride over your irritation because you want to appear agreeable and nice and not a troublemaker, not a negative presence. So you tolerate it. You don't accept your feelings of irritation, which tells your heart that this is not serving me. This isn't something that I want or is good, but you stay. But if you accept what the message is, you might say, oh, I'm going to excuse myself because I don't really need or want to be here. So when you accept your reactions, your irritation, you can choose and make a decision, different decision. So now you had an extreme case of acceptance and minor case of acceptance. Now we can get to the topic of awakening. We all know what it's like to open our eyes and stir in bed to wake up. Some of us will have the vestiges or a full recollection of having dreamt. Sleep often is a period of dreaming. And some of us have such wonderful recall. And it's wonderful because experts say that dreaming is an opportunity for the subconscious to tell you something that is been out of your daily awareness. I have a recurring dream, and the recurring dream is no matter what situation I am in, I'm going somewhere. And I never get to my destination. If I'm in a city or town, I'm going to different sections, looking and looking. And I don't really know what I'm looking for, but I know I'm not finding it. This nightmare occurred until recent times in my life, over and over. And the message as I look back reflects the search that I had been on all my life and not finding it. The search may have begun when I was 7 and I had been molested by the neighborhood boy. I looked up to the stars that night, asking God, where are you? And it's a theme that reflects everyone's real search on earth to want to return to the realm of love, to God, however that is known to you. So that as a teenager, I got involved in evangelical Christianity. Later on, when we were in Indiana, I believe, we became fascinated by a young Indian guru and attended his initiation. Then the search for God became dormant as we had a family and I was a mother. And then I taught because I had a graduate degree. So life went on sort of usually, but the looking for God remained deep inside. And then 8 years ago, intuition came to me and I was redirected in my life on a path that led to where I am today. I found the keys and I have found my connection to source, to spirit, to the God I was looking for at age 7. Now, the dream that you wake up from physically is one version of a dream. And another version of the dream is what Don Miguel Ruiz of the Four Agreements, who says that, here's a quote, we have a dysfunctional dream of the planet. Humans are mentally sick with a disease called fear. The symptoms of the disease are all the emotions that make humans suffer: anger, hate, sadness, envy, and betrayal. Take that in. This is the dream of the planet. So everything that we see in the world and the way we participate in the world is a dream. It's not real. So have you had time to think everything in our world, your whole life up to now, unless you've done the work that Don Miguel, who is shows, to see through the dream of the planet so you can be free of fear. Now, this is something that I have concentrated on almost every day, to accept that I'm dreaming my life. And I use as my guide a series of books called One with God. The subtitle is The Voice of Awakening by the Holy Spirit. Now, another way that I want to express how my dream was made so much tougher is that you see the point here, how emotions cause people to suffer. When I was very young, I absorbed the Japanese culture of Stoicism. So I buried a lot of my feelings. And what I came out, or what guided me from so early on, was the need to be good. I'll explain more of that in future presentation. I remember how I saw in kindergarten Lorraine being pulled up because she had peed in her pants. I got the message right away. Don't do stuff like that. So it led to a life of conformity. A life of conformity that created so much pressure. Now, if you become aware enough, you realize the pressure that you feel of having to conform to the people around you, conform to the work culture, conform to the American culture to survive the society, in the fads, in how you should behave, get vaccines or not. There is always pressure. For many of you, the pressure to succeed and or the pressure of perfectionism. All of this because we adopted the dream of the planet. Now, awareness and acceptance is what allowed me to wake up from the dream to where I am right now, feeling alive, confident, and at peace. Even now, when I'm thinking, I hope I'm making sense. So, I'm going to move to another strange part of this movement into my material. I'm going to have, and I will every day, have a section called Using Your Imagination. You will hear how I stress intuition, imagination, and inspiration. Now, some of you are thinking, oh, goodness, this is getting strange. I don't know whether I want to participate in this, or I'm not going to get into this. I'm pessimistic, you might feel. I don't trust this. So notice whatever responses you had as soon as I put imagine. Hopefully, your response was, oh, this will be fun. I can be curious. And those who felt some resistance in you, notice it, accept it, and say, I'll try something different. I'm willing to go along with this. So, what I want you to imagine, and to get to a place of imagination, I use this process. To close your eyes and begin to pay attention to your breathing. Because every breath that you watch makes the next one deeper. And the more you relax, the more of your body becomes aware, expands in breathing, breathing in many more oxygen atoms, molecules. Continuing to watch your breath brings in relaxation to your body and possibly into your thinking mind as well. This allows us to move from our current place to a space of imagination that you knew as a child, where you got to play, maybe have imaginary friends, maybe draw, paint, where you had freedom to create. And now, in the space of imagination, I want you to imagine looking at the successful people you know as an adult in your world. Can you think and imagine what one of them is like? Someone like Oprah Winfrey, Meryl Streep, or some person you're acquainted with whose life is enviable. So imagine what their lives are like and all the things that they have in it. The opportunities, the recognition, and you imagine how good it must feel to have that. Okay, you can let that go. And now imagine a life where you can have everything you want. So see your life at a future time, having everything right now that you want. Maybe a fantastic mansion of a home. Maybe having a small home in a woods or meadow, by a lake, by a stream. I love trees and I love flowers. So wherever my place is, it's going to be something like that. The people in your lives, the times you spend together, the conversations that you have, all the opportunity that you wanted, but probably said, but I can't afford that. So that now you can imagine having everything you want to do because you can't afford it, because you have more money than you know what to do with. So we're going to stop this imagination exercise, because whatever you dreamed of will become clear as a true vision and dream for you as you practice what I present. And at the end, the clarity that you have will enable you to move in the right direction. You met your first commitment slide yesterday, and in today, I want you to write on your pad, I, your name, continue to reflect for at least 15 minutes before tomorrow's meeting on how aware you think you are. It's funny. The self-reflection will bring in awareness, and you'll feel how usual it is or how unusual it is. So spend 15 minutes before tomorrow to become aware of how you are, where you think you are. So this is the A.C.E method that I'm presenting. We covered today awareness, acceptance, awaken. Tomorrow, we begin our emotional education, change, choose, connect. And the final sequence of this is E, empower, evolve, expand. The C of tomorrow will be change how you deal with your emotions, choose to receive their messages and guidance, and connect with your inner child. Some of you may know that I am an inner child specialist. Attention, this is my sign that an assignment is coming for you to do between today and tomorrow. I want you to sit with yourself and reflect on how often and when you are angry, afraid, and sad. So you need 3 sections, one for anger, one for fear, one for grief or sadness. The second part is to write on how you respond to each emotion in yourself and when you witness when others are feeling it. Angry, afraid, sad. Now, these are the basic negative emotions. And being negative, the label makes sense because for most of us, it's something we don't want to feel. And we will address all of it shortly. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to a rather imperfect presentation. You see, I used to be a perfectionist, and I would have gotten down to making this as perfect as I can. But in some ways, I am listening to my intuition, see what comes to me, deciding whether I'm going to go there or not. I'm more flexible, I'm more in the moment, and this is where I get to be imperfect. And this is the progress I have made. So thank you for tolerating or appreciating my imperfection. And I can't wait for you to take in the next presentation. Thank you so much for being with me.